on your watch.
What I'm going to do is, if the Democrats go along with it, which they don't want to because they want to make the insurance companies very rich, okay? I want the money to be paid to the people to go out and buy their own health care instead of paying to the, the insurance companies, their stock has gone up 1,700% in a short period of time. Did you know that? 1,700. You wish your corn went up, Ed. But the insurance companies, stock has gone up by 1,700%, 1,800%. They're taking in trillions of dollars. I don't want to pay the insurance companies anything. And I know a lot of them, but they're owned by the Democrats.
Listen to this carefully, because what you just witnessed from that stage is the purest distillation of right-wing pathology wrapped in fiscal populism, and you need to understand what is really happening here before another 22 million Americans lose their health care, while billionaire insurance executives laugh all the way to their private islands. And I'm not being hyperbolic when I tell you that this moment represents everything catastrophically wrong with how conservatives weaponize economic anxiety to advance policies that will devastate working families. The clip opens and already we are drowning in contradictions, so thick you could bottle them and sell them as premium-grade gaslighting, because Trump stands before cameras claiming Democrats want to enrich insurance companies when the empirical reality screams the opposite so loudly it should shatter every window in America. And here's what makes this particularly infuriating in this precise historical juncture where enhanced ACA subsidies face expiration at year's end, and Republicans have made dismantling Obama's signature healthcare law their central priority, while record enrollment of 24 million people signed up for coverage in 2025, with more than half living in districts represented by Republicans, creating this delicious political nightmare for the GOP. Now hold on, because it gets so much worse, and you need to see the layers of deception here. The 1,700% stock increase claim that Trump tosses out like he's revealing some grand conspiracy, when health insurer stocks are indeed up over 1,000% from when the ACA was enacted in 2010, but the S&P 500 grew 251% in the same period, which yes shows outsized growth, but this is coming from the Paragon Health Institute, a conservative think tank that exists specifically to attack the ACA, and here's the thing that should make your blood boil with righteous fury. Trump frames this as Democrats enriching insurance companies, when major insurance companies historically favored Republicans with their political donations, and in the 2024 cycle specifically United Health Group gave nearly 60% of its donations to Democrats, which proves nothing except that corporate giants hedge their bets across both parties to maintain their stranglehold on policy, but Trump weaponizes this complexity into a cudgel against Democrats exclusively. The audacity is staggering, and I want you to feel the full weight of what's being proposed here, because Trump demanded Senate Republicans send money used for ACA premiums directly to people so they can purchase their own much better health care. Senator Lindsey Graham called the ACA the biggest scam on the planet, while reality tells us, if enhanced subsidies expire, average premium payments will more than double from $888 annually in 2025 to $1,904 in 2026. Which represents a 114% increase that will absolutely devastate middle-class families. And here comes the part that should shake you, because a 60-year-old couple earning $85,000 annually, just over the income threshold, would see premiums rise by almost $23,000, turning healthcare into a luxury good reserved for the wealthy, while Trump claims he's liberating people from insurance company tyranny. Watch the rhetorical sleight of hand happening in real time, because Trump positions himself as the populist champion fighting fat cat insurers when nearly all Obamacare premium tax credit dollars constitute direct spending going to large health insurers, with over $100 billion annually flowing to companies like United Healthcare, which sounds damning until you understand subsidies are sent directly to insurers to offset people's monthly premiums, and more than 90% of Obamacare enrollees qualify for enhanced subsidies in 2025, meaning this isn't corporate welfare. This is the mechanism by which working families can actually afford coverage, and dismantling it doesn't hurt insurance companies. It annihilates access for millions of vulnerable Americans. The conservative framing treats insurers as the beneficiaries when they're actually the intermediaries in a system designed to make healthcare accessible, and Republicans point out the ACA lets insurance companies keep 20% of enhanced subsidies for administrative costs and profits, which becomes their justification for destroying the entire apparatus rather than reforming the profit-taking, which would be the obvious progressive solution if anyone actually cared about outcomes rather than ideological warfare. And then we arrive at the centerpiece of this dystopian fantasy, Trump's vision of giving people cash directly to buy their own health care, which sounds empowering until you examine what it actually means, because ideas like sending funds directly to consumers could rock the Affordable Care Act, potentially lead to its withering or demise, since people with fewer healthcare needs would likely use funds to buy less comprehensive, less expensive coverage, leaving sicker, costlier enrollees in Obamacare policies and prompting insurers to raise premiums in what experts describe as a premium death spiral. And this is the fundamental cruelty embedded in conservative healthcare philosophy, the belief that healthcare should function as a pure market where healthy people get cheap plans and sick people get priced out of existence. People with high-deductible health plans typically pay thousands of dollars out of their own pockets before coverage kicks in, and many Republicans are reluctant to extend government subsidies that help cover patients' medical bills through the Affordable Care Act, while promoting these high-deductible plans paired with health savings accounts that leave about 100 million Americans with healthcare debt, despite having insurance, because the conservative model punishes sickness and rewards health in ways that are morally bankrupting. The cash payment scheme reveals the ideological endgame, and I need you to understand the stakes because Republicans propose giving money directly to Americans in tax-advantage health savings accounts, paired with high-deductible bronze insurance plans. HSAs cannot be used to pay for monthly premiums, and critics argue they won't help if someone cannot afford the underlying cost in the first place, which exposes the entire con. You're given a tax-advantage account that sounds generous, but you still have to afford catastrophically high deductibles, and the monthly premium comes out of your own decimated paycheck, while Trump pretends he's depositing freedom directly into your bank account. Research found cancer patients with high-deductible health insurance were more likely to die than similar patients without that coverage. And this should be the headline screaming from every newspaper in America. Conservative healthcare policy literally kills people, but it does so quietly through individual bankruptcies and delayed treatments, rather than dramatic legislative spectacle. So the violence remains invisible. What's happening right now in December 2025 is a catastrophe unfolding in slow motion, and you're watching it in this clip because Trump's push for a new healthcare plan has stalled amid disagreements within the GOP, and the dispute has slowed efforts to avert a looming spike in insurance premiums affecting roughly 22 million people, with the White House initially expecting to roll out a plan that was scrapped following sharp backlash from Republican lawmakers, demonstrating that even Republicans cannot agree on how to destroy healthcare, because some moderate GOP lawmakers are keenly aware many Affordable Care Act enrollees are Republican, with more than half of Obamacare enrollees living in districts represented by Republicans, creating this delicious political trap where conservative ideology collides with constituent reality. Expiration of tax credits means enrollees will see annual premiums more than double, from an average of $888 in 2025 to $1,904 in 2026, and Democrats have been laying groundwork to make healthcare a focus of campaigns with strategy for capturing House majority, centered on pinning higher bills for groceries, health insurance, and utilities on policies of Trump and Republicans, because nothing clarifies political stakes like watching your insurance premium septuple while the president who promised you'd have money left over delivers financial devastation instead. The insurance companies owned by Democrats line is particularly offensive gaslighting and demands deconstruction because yes, 4 big insurance companies and their employees gave about $4.5 million collectively in campaign contributions in the 2020 cycle, with just over half going to Democrats. But this ignores that insurance companies and their employees understand that hedging bets and giving money to both Republicans and Democrats is a smart way to stop any kind of healthcare reform. Which reveals the actual conspiracy. Insurance companies don't belong to Democrats. They belong to capitalism, and they fund both parties to ensure neither party threatens their profit model. The progressive position has always been to reduce or eliminate private insurance's role through Medicare for all or robust public options, while Republicans defend insurance company prerogatives disguised as market freedom, so Trump claiming Democrats are owned by insurers inverts the entire political topology. Progressives and health advocates actually want the party to do more to rein in private insurers and reform the healthcare market, with worries that contributions will make it harder for Democrats to take a tougher line on insurers, meaning the left wants to fight insurance companies harder, not protect them. This is Foucauldian biopolitics in its rawest form, the management of populations through the administration of life and death, where healthcare becomes the terrain on which power inscribes itself onto bodies, and Trump rhetoric positions government intervention as oppression, when the actual oppression is the market's sorting mechanism that determines who deserves to live based on their capacity to pay. The tax and spending legislation enacting Trump's domestic agenda cuts federal health spending by about $1 trillion over a decade, and is expected to reverse many healthcare coverage gains of the Biden and Obama administrations, with reductions causing nearly 12 million more people to be without insurance by 2034, and this is the material reality hidden beneath Trump's folksy "you wish your corn went up that much" appeal to rural voters who will be devastated by these policies. About half the growth since subsidy boost went into effect comes from Texas, Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina, and most current enrollees live in a state won by Trump or in a congressional district won by a Republican lawmaker, which means red state voters are about to experience the consequences of their electoral choices as premiums explode and coverage evaporates because conservative governance requires human sacrifice at the altar of ideological purity. The setup language is so perfectly cynical. Obamacare is a setup, not a flawed but functional system that extended coverage to millions, but a deliberate conspiracy to transfer wealth to insurance companies, and this paranoid-style politics transforms policy disputes into morality plays, where Democrats become corrupt villains rather than flawed actors navigating impossible trade-offs in a system where Republicans blocked every progressive alternative. Extending enhanced subsidies would cost about $350 billion over a decade, which sounds expensive, until you remember we just gave trillions in tax cuts to corporations and the wealthy, without blinking, but suddenly healthcare for working families requires fiscal responsibility lectures. Although ACA subsidies came with significant costs, they have largely been offset with other budgetary savings, as both the Affordable Care Act and Inflation Reduction Act included revenue increases and Medicare spending reduction, meaning this was actually paid for, unlike conservative tax cuts that exploded deficits. What makes this moment particularly dangerous is premiums are expected to more than double according to a nonpartisan health policy research group, and an estimated 2 million more people will be uninsured, while enacted Democratic legislation during COVID pandemic helped spur record 24 million people to sign up, with more than 90% receiving subsidies, and expiring beefed-up subsidies along with rising healthcare costs contributed to insurers hiking rates by 26% on average for next year, creating this catastrophic collision where policy expiration meets market increases, meets political paralysis, and real human beings pay with their health and financial security. Those with incomes just above poverty level will go from paying zero or nearly zero in premiums to being on the hook for a few $100s a year, and for families already struggling with inflation and stagnant wages, this becomes the difference between staying enrolled and going uninsured. Gambling, that catastrophic illness won't strike. The 1,700% figure Trump throws around so casually deserves interrogation, because main insurers participating in Medicaid managed care experienced large upswings, with Molina up more than 1,000% and Centene up more than 425% from 2013 to 2024, which yes represents massive growth, but the ACA's Medicaid expansion produced a windfall for health insurers, with federal spending on expansion enrollees equal to $126 billion in 2023, and the federal government paying nearly the entire cost, with most enrollees covered by Medicaid managed care, where insurers provide coverage. So this is government purchasing health care for poor people through private insurers, which you can critique as insufficiently socialist, but frames as Democrats enriching cronies rather than extending coverage through available market mechanisms. The progressive critique would be we should have single-payer Medicare for all, eliminating private insurance entirely, but Republicans blocked that, so Democrats worked within the possible and now get blamed for the system's profit-seeking that Republicans demanded remain intact. I want you to see how this rhetoric functions to obscure class warfare, because Trump performing populist rage against insurance companies, while Trump wrote on Truth Social that the only healthcare he will support is sending money directly back to people, with nothing going to the big fat rich insurance companies who have made trillions, sounds like economic justice, until you realize the White House framework would have extended subsidies for 2 years, but set new income limits and required all enrollees pay a minimum monthly premium, and proposed incentivizing people to pick lower-tier plans by allowing them to funnel federal aid into health savings accounts, and would have set the stage to allow consumers to pick less expensive but less comprehensive plans outside Affordable Care Act exchanges, which would likely undermine Obamacare, revealing the goal isn't protecting people from insurance companies, but dismantling the regulatory architecture that makes insurers cover pre-existing conditions and provide comprehensive benefits. The cash payment becomes a Trojan horse for deregulation that will create a two-tiered system where healthy, wealthy people get cheap, catastrophic plans, and everyone else gets priced out of coverage or trapped in high-risk pools that were the nightmare of pre-ACA healthcare. The money to be paid to the people to go out and buy their own healthcare, phrasing deploys the libertarian fantasy that healthcare functions like any other consumer good, where competition and choice produce optimal outcomes. The complex U.S. healthcare system is not designed for patients to shop for services, despite attempts by the first Trump administration to increase transparency, because you cannot comparison shop during a heart attack, and information asymmetries between doctors and patients make true market dynamics impossible. Although high-deductible plans are supposed to encourage patients to shop around for medical care to find lowest prices, one woman with complex pregnancy and heart troubles found this impractical and instead chose the largest health system in her area. Because when facing serious illness, you want the best care, not the cheapest care, and market logic becomes irrelevant when the stakes are life and death. Within a year, while juggling serious illness and newborn twins, she was buried under more than $13,000 in medical debt, and about 100 million people in the U.S. have some form of healthcare debt, with most being insured, proving insurance alone doesn't protect against financial devastation in a system designed to extract maximum profit. And this is where we need to talk about what's really happening behind the shutdown politics, because Democrats want a funding bill to include healthcare subsidies that are due to expire for 24 million Americans at year's end, creating this manufactured crisis where Republicans hold government funding hostage to force healthcare cuts. Senate Republicans agreed to hold a vote on extending ACA subsidies as part of a deal with Democrats to fund government and end a record-long shutdown, which means this clip exists in context of Republican brinkmanship that uses human suffering as negotiating leverage. Since enhanced subsidies began in 2021, market enrollment grew tremendously, rising from 11 million people in 2020 to 25 million today, with Democrats seeing it as success, whereas Republicans are concerned about waste and overuse, and there's the ideological chasm. Democrats celebrate expanded coverage while Republicans pathologize people accessing healthcare, calling it waste rather than recognizing expanded coverage as the point of a functioning health system. What Trump is proposing would create administrative chaos and human catastrophe, because currently ACA enrollees who qualify for tax credits never see the funds as they are sent directly to insurers to offset people's monthly premiums, which creates a seamless system where subsidies reduce what you owe, rather than requiring you to pay full price and wait for reimbursement, and switching to cash payments would require people to receive a few $1,000s, and then when they get a cancer diagnosis just go bankrupt, as Democratic Senator Chris Murphy pointed out, because you'd be given inadequate cash to purchase inadequate coverage that fails when you actually need it. Trump wrote people will be allowed to negotiate and buy their own much better insurance power to the people, which imports the delusion that individuals have bargaining power against multi-billion-dollar corporations, or that unregulated insurance markets produce better outcomes when pre-ACA reality was denial of coverage for pre-existing conditions, lifetime caps, and rescissions where insurers canceled policies when people got sick. The trillions of dollars being taken in line requires examination because federal subsidies through ACA, Medicaid expansion, and exchanges, which almost all flowed to insurers, totaled $218 billion in fiscal year 2023. Gross federal cost of subsidies grew from $18 billion in 2014 to $92 billion in 2023, and an estimated $138 billion in 2025, which yes is substantial spending, about half of all healthcare spending, and the majority of health insurer revenue now comes directly from government, meaning we've created this bizarre hybrid where government pays private companies to provide healthcare, and the progressive solution is eliminate the middleman through single payer, but conservatives want to eliminate the subsidy, leaving people to face market pricing that will exclude millions from coverage. The insurance company profits exist because we chose a private insurance model rather than public provision, and attacking subsidies rather than the profit motive reveals conservative priorities value market ideology over human welfare. Trump claiming Democrats don't want to go along with it because they want to make insurance companies very rich inverts causality so completely it induces vertigo, because Republicans have decried the subsidy system as enriching insurers, with some supporting sending funds directly to Americans to give them more control over their health insurance decisions, when Democrats so far have shown no appetite to seriously consider Trump's proposal, with House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries quickly dismissing the idea, saying Republicans aren't operating in good faith as it relates to doing anything to actually make healthcare more affordable. Progressive Senator Elizabeth Warren warned Trump's proposal could be just a Republican bait-and-switch to repeal Obamacare for the 70th time, identifying the pattern where every Republican healthcare proposal aims to dismantle protections rather than improve access. We are witnessing in real time the consequence of letting market fundamentalism govern life and death decisions, because people are receiving letters saying ACA marketplace plans are going from $50 a month to $350. 4 million Americans are projected to lose coverage because health insurance is getting more expensive, and generous subsidies implemented in 2021 are expiring with pain not evenly distributed, as Republican-led states that didn't expand Medicaid saw far more people take advantage of subsidies that are now going away, serving as a kind of backdoor to getting people covered, meaning the states with the cruelest Medicaid restrictions will experience the most devastating coverage losses, creating a perfect storm of conservative policy failure. People who cannot afford to go without coverage, like someone who just got out of a 6-day hospital stay, saw subsidies enable leaving corporate America to start a business, and now watches subsidies going away, making monthly premiums rise 7-fold, and this person sees no option but to pay whatever it costs, cutting the rest of her budget, because staying alive requires access to healthcare, and this is the material human reality erased by Trump's 1700% demagoguery. The stakes could not be higher, and the time for centrist equivocation has passed, because what we're experiencing is not a good faith policy debate about optimal healthcare delivery mechanisms, but rather a coordinated assault on the social safety net, disguised as populist liberation, and every progressive who understands healthcare as a human right needs to recognize Trump's rhetoric as the dangerous propaganda it represents. The OBBA is expected to cause around 17 million Americans to become uninsured over the next decade, driven in part by expiration of subsidy enhancements and more restrictive marketplace policies, and hospitals could lose $321 billion over 10 years, exacerbating closures in underserved communities and reducing available care capacity, which means this isn't just about insurance premiums, but about the systematic dismantling of healthcare infrastructure that will leave entire communities without access to care and create medical deserts where people die from treatable conditions. You cannot separate this healthcare assault from broader conservative project of unraveling the regulatory state, because Republicans claim Obamacare fraud is a cash cow for insurance companies, driving up healthcare costs, with estimates that improper payments including fraud, waste, and abuse total billions of dollars annually, with some reports citing estimates of up to $27 billion a year, which becomes justification for destroying the entire system rather than improving enforcement. And yes, 12 million Obamacare enrollees in 2024 filed zero medical claims, meaning many never knew they were even covered, which indicates enrollment fraud that should be addressed. But Republicans weaponize administrative problems to argue for eliminating healthcare rather than fixing administration, because the goal isn't efficient government, but dismantled government and unregulated markets determining who lives and dies. What this clip reveals is the terrifying effectiveness of right-wing populist rhetoric that mobilizes legitimate anger at corporate power toward outcomes that strengthen corporate power, because Trump performs as tribune of the people raging against fat cat insurers while proposing policies that will leave millions uninsured at the mercy of those same insurers operating in deregulated markets with zero obligation to provide comprehensive coverage or accept pre-existing conditions. The insurance companies owned by Democrats' formulation is pure projection, because Republican policies have always protected insurance company prerogatives to deny coverage, maximize profits, and discriminate based on health status, while Democrats, despite their corporate compromises, have fought to expand coverage and regulate insurer behavior, even if imperfectly and insufficiently, from a true left perspective that would eliminate private insurance entirely. This is the moment where we either recognize healthcare as a fundamental right requiring public provision, or we accept a system where ability to pay determines whether you live or die, and Trump just told you which side he's on despite the populist performance, and every single person who cares about justice needs to understand what's happening and fight back before 22 million Americans lose their coverage and the carnage becomes irreversible.